What's up YouTube? This is In Vega Food. My name is Ash. Let's talk about my meat. The meat in question today is vegan or plant-based meat alternatives. It comes in a variety of different shapes, sizes, ingredients. You'll have seen it in the supermarkets, you'll have seen it in health food shops, you know the stuff. It attempts to replicate chicken, beef, pork, lamb, everything. But today we're talking about a very specific one for a couple of reasons. One, you can make it yourself and it is really easy, and we're gonna do that here today. And two, it is cheap as frank. Now, when I say easy and cheap, you can literally make this with just 2 ingredients, one of which comes out of your tap, depending on what you're gonna use it for. Now, if you want a really meaty flavored meat to serve on its own, it's gonna require more ingredients. It's gonna require some seasoning, some spices, some flavoring. But if you're gonna stick this into a curry, you can make this with just 2 ingredients, because this has a really neutral flavor and it will soak up the flavor from whatever you put it into. So what is the ingredient? It is this. Looks like flour because it is a type of flour. This is wheat gluten flour. You can find it in every health food store. You can find it on Amazon, on eBay, and hundreds of other websites. It is cheap, and you do not need much of it in order to replicate meat. I'm talking 1 cup here will make roughly 4 small steaks worth. But what about nutrition? Well, the protein content of wheat gluten flour is around, in its dry form, is around 70 to 80% protein. Now, before everybody signs off in the comment section, this is plant-based protein and it is not a complete whole protein by itself. Whereas if you eat a meat steak, you're gonna get all 9 amino acids. With this, you're not. You're gonna need to eat it with something else. But to be honest, if you were just eating this by itself, a bit weird. It is also extremely low in carbs and fat, and it is a really good source of certain micronutrients. Iron, selenium, phosphorus, among others. Now, this becomes a complete protein when you mix it with things like lentils, beans, seeds, legumes, that sort of thing. So if you were, for example, going to have that in a taco with some black beans and a bit of salad and some brown rice, that's all your amino acids. That's your protein. So when someone says to you, hey vegan, where'd you get your protein? Pick this up, don't throw it. Explain politely. So as I said, this without any flavoring or any seasoning is gonna taste pretty bland. It's not gonna have much of a flavor. But again, if you're sticking that into a curry or into a soup or into something like that, it doesn't matter because it will just soak up the flavor of that with the meaty texture that you want. Now, when it comes to flavoring it and seasoning it and adding a few more ingredients, it's literally whatever you have in your spice drawer. Now, I tend to mix this up with various different things. Sometimes I'll stick some smoked paprika in it to give it a smoky flavor. Sometimes I'll just stick some cayenne pepper in it. In fact, sometimes, you know, even the little sachets that you get with a dinner kit, like the fajita seasoning, the taco seasoning, you pick them up, they're about 60 pence in the shop. Chuck half of one of them in with this mixture that we're gonna make in a second. Let's make it. Okay, so grab a jug or a mixing bowl, and all we need to do here is 1 cup of wheat gluten flour. Pop that in there, as I say, around about 1 cup's worth. If you don't have a measuring spoon or something like that, it doesn't matter, you can use a teacup, you can use half a mug, as long as you're consistent with the amount of water that you put into it. Now, as I said, normally I would stick in some seasoning. At the very least, I would put some salt in here, but I did promise you 2 ingredients, this and water. So 2 ingredients is exactly what we will have here. So once you've got that in there and anything else that you might be putting in, give it a little mix with a spoon until it forms a dough. Once it's mixed, just get in there with your fingers and just mix it further. Wipe the sides of the bowl. It'll feel squelchy, it'll feel disgusting, it'll feel like a chunk of raw meat. Now, once that's all mixed up like that, grab yourself a chopping board. And top tip, if your chopping board's a little bit slidey, put a wet cloth underneath it, slab that on there. Now, the trick with this is you want to knead it like you would a bread dough, but the amount that you knead it will determine how tough, meaty, and thick the texture will be. So if I start kneading this now, like that, you'll see it's getting meatier and meatier, tougher, grislier. Almost like muscle fibers, almost like muscle tissue. Just stretch it out a little bit, give it a little turn, stretch it out a little bit more. And if I show you this, if you can see this, you can see it's getting tougher and tougher to the point where it's quite hard to break. Now I usually give this around about 30 seconds to a minute of kneading time. Any more than that and it's a little bit meatier than I want it to be, depending on the dish as well. For the purposes of this video, we're just gonna make a generic meat, which sounds disgusting, but there we go. So stretch out one last little bit like that, stick it on your chopping board, grab your bowl or your jug, plant that on top and leave it for 15 minutes. Now, once your 15 minutes are up, reveal your masterpiece and grab a knife, a sharp knife. Now, I find the best process for one this size, with 1 cup's worth of each, is to divide it into quarters. So if you cut that down the middle, cut that in half again, and you get almost like a small steak's worth. Now, once you've got your 4 pieces there, what you want to do is grab either a steaming pot, or if you don't have a steaming pot, you can do what I did up until about a week ago, and that is put these 4 pieces onto a small plate, stick an upturned ramekin in a big pot, put the plate on top with some boiling water at the bottom, lid on top, steam it whatever way works for you. Now, I bought these pots specifically for this channel, so I'm just going to stick them in there. I'm only going to put 2 in each one, just to give them a little bit of room, because these are going to swell up as they're steaming, and then they're going to shrink down a little bit once they're done. So we've got our 4 steaks in a steaming pot. I'm going to put these one on top of the other one, and I'm going to steam them for about 30 minutes. Okay, once your 30 minutes is up, grab yourself a wire rack and some tongs, and then we just want to put these on here to let them steam, cool, and dry. You'll notice now that they're a little bit bigger than they were when they went in. These will shrink back down a little bit and condense, and we'll come back to them in a couple of minutes. Now, once that has cooled down enough, grab your steaks. And all we're doing now is we're just gonna cut them into any shape you want, really. These can be cubes, strips, you can grab a fork and shred it. For this particular one, I'm just gonna cut this into strips like that, and then square them off into cubes. Now, at this stage, you can throw these straight into a stir fry or into a curry, and they will soak up the flavor of whatever you're cooking them with. But for this particular batch, what I'm going to do is give you a little tip on how to marinate them and get the flavor really, really full. First of all, grab yourself a big mixing bowl, stick these in here, and what we're going to do is grab a tiny bit of bicarbonate of soda, pour that in, a little bit of dark soy sauce, maybe a teaspoon's worth, a pinch of salt, freshly cracked pepper, and a tiny bit of sugar. Grab your bowl, mix this in, and I mean mix it well. And once that's mixed and the color has gone a little bit darker and that juice and the flavoring has soaked up into these, stick them in an airtight container, put them in the fridge for about half an hour, and just let that marinade soak up into them. Once they are sufficiently marinated, grab yourself a wok or a frying pan, a little bit of oil, high heat. Stick a light on if it helps. Once that is nice and hot, grab your meat, stick it in there, and get it sizzling away. Plop that one back in. Once you see that the meat is starting to cook or has cooked, and the sugar around the edges has started to caramelize and gone really nice and crispy, you're done. This is gonna take around about 3 to 4 minutes on a high heat. And that is it for really quick, really cheap, really easy to make seitan meat. And I did a little bit of math while I was cooking this. I bought this for £28 for 5 kilos, and that equates to, for 1 cup, 67 pence. 67 pence for an entire plate full, or an entire curry full, or an entire anything full of vegan meat, which is a damn sight cheaper than buying it in the shops. That is certified cheap as shit. I don't know how much it costs. But this is cheap. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking with me. If you found this video useful, informative, or just fun to watch, please hit that like button. It helps us out no end. My question to you is, what would you use this in? If you had just made it, what would be the first dish that you would put it in to try it out and see if it is actually meaty and tasty and delicious, or if it's just a load of vegan bollocks? Let me know.